Hi, I am Martin Felix. I am Winthrop Holder. I am Elise Jiang. I am Diana Rodriguez. We represent the Central American Isthmus countries of the Caribbean region. Before we begin to say anything further, we have to recognize that the people that were the first people of this region were the Aztec and the Mayan people. But let's proceed and get back to this a little bit later. The Federal Republic of Central America was one country that consists of all of these nations from 1823 to 1841. Today, these are thriving republics. All of the countries of Central America, except for Belize, are republics. And if you look at the chart, you will see that the population will range from 12 million in Guatemala, which is the largest country in terms of population, and the Belize being the smallest country in that region with only with less than 300,000 people. So it's a very diverse region, totaling 40 million people. What makes the countries of our group a unique subset in the region? Well, first of all, it is as Caribbean as any of the other countries that we have studied. Why is it not in our Caribbean class? I'm not sure, but it should be in many senses, in all of the senses that we've looked at in the class: geographic, historical, geologic, and also cultural. This area is very important. Middle America is not a united, unified realm, but is characterized by a high level of political and cultural diversity, uh, ethnicity of the people whose ancestors are native to the Americas are from this area. African, Europeans, Asian ethnic backgrounds make up the cultural framework today. This realm is often associated with the term Latin America because of the dominance of colonialism from European countries like Spain and in all of the countries except for Belize. But this area is also very important in the sense of the the geographic, as I said, and the geologic senses. We have the Caribbean, the Cocos Plate, as we looked at in the the beginning of the course with the Boswell piece on the geology of the Caribbean. We realized that it's that plate, that Cocos Plate, according to the predominant theory in terms of the formation of the Caribbean, that that burst into that narrow area and pushed the Caribbean plate east, that led to the islands on the periphery to be as volcanic as they are. In fact, the countries of Central America share that commonality with the Caribbean islands of having this volcanic ridge at the edge of the isthmus, and the other side of the Caribbean Sea, the Caribbean islands, the Leeward Islands, and the Leeward and Windward Islands, forming this huge volcanic arc on the other side. So this characteristic of Central America and the Caribbean is what encloses the Caribbean Sea. So it's very, very important that we study this area. It is also very important that we study this area in the sense of, as we started the course, we were looking at the accomplishment of Caribbean people, and we were saying that it's such a small region and they have accomplished so much. Well, Central America is no exception in that regard. We've had Nobel Prize nominees and winners from that area. Oscar Arias Sanchez from Costa Rica in 1987. He was president of, but later on played a huge role in ending the civil strife in that engulfed Central America in the 1970s and 1980s. Another important figure from this area is Rigoberta Menchú from Guatemala. She was a Nobel Prize winner in 1992. She works for the right of indigenous peoples and reconciliation between ethnic groups there. We spoke a lot about the culture of the Caribbean countries, right? The other countries studied, and the musical accomplishment, of bachata and salsa and reggae and calypso. Well, Central America also has a great accomplishment in that area. Palacio is a music that emerged from that area and quite unique. One of the music, actually, there were several, but one to be made note of is Palacio, which is sang mainly in Garifuna, a language that is a mixture of Arawak and African roots. Um, but it's also composed in English as well. So in terms of language variety, there is that emerges very strong as well. Who were the first peoples of this subregion and what became of them? So the earliest people from that area were the Aztec and the Mayan. The Mayan occupied much of the northwest part of the isthmus from Chiapas and Yucatan, now part of southern Mexico, through Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, El Salvador, and into Nicaragua. Although the Maya were the most advanced pre-civilization in this hemisphere, they were never like one entity. So they were, this area, although small, had always been very diverse. And today, that diversity still exists. What happened to them? Many of the people in that area are of that indigenous background, mixed with whites and Europeans in general, and also to a certain extent, to a large extent, really, Africans. So the people exist in terms of their original genetic pool, and also in terms of the intermarriage and admixture of the other people. We'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the Neo-Columbian exchange. What are the evidence of the survival of indigenous people of this region? Well, one of the things that, as I said before, was that the Black Caribs, also known as the Garifuna uh, of St. Vincent, which is in the Eastern Caribbean, they were descendants from a group of enslaved Africans and the Caribs, right? And some people say even some Arawak as well. Um, they were shipwrecked there, in the Caribbean, in around St. Vincent, as well as escaped Maroons. They intermarried with the Caribs and formed the last native culture to resist the British. And then in 1795, the British colonists deported the Black Caribs to this Roatan Island off the coast of Honduras. So many of them um, uh, live there. The descendants of them live in this area of Honduras. Their descendants continue to live there today and are known as the Garifuna ethnic group. Today, the Garifuna can be found in significant numbers in Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, right? Today, the Kalinago and their descendants continue to live in both, the Caribbean islands of Dominica, which we studied that experience, and St. Vincent. But they also live across the Caribbean Sea in their new home of, as I said, Roatan Island of Honduras, but also in Guatemala, and Belize. So these people are examples of the survival of the indigenous people. But also, as I said before, there are also, as we said before, there are also indigenous people that live in all of these countries in great numbers. There's a lot of cultural retention in that area of the Mayan and the Aztec group of people. The Africans. We looked at the Africans in week 5. how did the African enslavement impact this part of the Caribbean? In this case, we're talking about Central America, the Isthmus. So again, we're looking at Belize as one of the many examples. The black people in Belize are descendants of the enslaved people brought into work as woodcutters in the forests. Slavery in the settlement was associated with the extraction of timber, unlike the Caribbean islands where it was mostly sugar and tobacco and so on. These Africans were brought there as woodcutters and in some cases explorers. Okay, um, treaties with the native people at the time forbade the production of plantation crops. So the Africans were brought there to be woodcutters and you know, being involved in the exploration, as I said before. In Honduras, enslaved people played an important role in the mining industry. Many of them came directly from Africa, but some of them came to the Caribbean island at first and then to Central America. Places like Angola and the Senegambia area is where they came from, while others came from, as I said, from the Caribbean directly. But after coming through the Middle Passage, settling in the Caribbean islands. Um, so, how did the early African presence in this part of the Americas, resulting from enslavement, continue to shape contemporary cultural, social, and political issues there? So this is a photo of a black family in El Salvador. Oftentimes we don't really think of El Salvador as a place where there are many Africans, but this is one of the reasons why we wanted to present this case of El Salvador, because it's not one that is often recognized. So what is the continuing situation there? Darker skinned folks are told their roots must come from countries outside of El Salvador, such as Honduras or Guatemala, because of the myth that black people never arrived in El Salvador. As I said before, this isn't far from the truth. These people were brought to El Salvador to work in the mining and the forest clearing chores. Importantly, Salvadorian definition of racial categories are influenced by exposure to U.S. culture and media, but does not consider the differences in European and indigenous ancestry between the Americas. In more simpler terms, black people look differently because of the country's history and colonialism. Okay, so Afro-Salvadorians are the African population that came to El Salvador, who have completely mixed in the general mestizo population. A total of 10,000 Africans were brought to El Salvador, which is quite a lot. El Salvador has no English, sort of like West Indian culture as such. Garifuna and Mestizo population, largely due to laws banning the immigration of blacks into the country in the 1930s. These laws were revoked in the 1980s, as late as the 1980s. So there are problems, but the presence of the Africans there cannot be mistaken. And how does the understanding of Caribbean history helps us appreciate the regional language varieties that help shape Caribbean identity within that particular subgrouping today? Well, it's a very diverse linguistic area. The main indigenous groups in each of the countries can be seen here. So as was presented in the first assignment of our group, I tried to show that these were some of the people that predominated these areas. Okay, this is not an exhaustive list, but it just shows, it gives you a sense of the predominant ethnic groups in that area. And we also looked at the issue of linguistic imperialism, and that is the imposition of one language on speakers of other languages. Okay, so it's also known as linguistic nationalism. But one example of that is how the Spanish was imposed on these people that spoke the Aztec and Mayan language, and today the majority of the people in that Central American area speak Spanish. And then the example of the Garifuna also should be looked at as well, whereby these people are a mixture of the Arak, Caribs, and the and African people, marooned on St. Vincent and Dominica, and they speak a Creole with an English inflection. Okay, what characterized the Neo-Columbian exchange within this group? Yes, so we looked at the Neo-Columbian exchange in week 8, and we realized that areas like Central America were major areas of this experience because of the huge land areas that were available. So the introduction of coffee to the New World symbolized the beginning of a new phase in the global biological transfer to the Americas, which really characterized the early plantation in that area. So, you can see here coffee farms in Costa Rica. Coffee basically came from Africa. And so it's one of the things that Costa Rica is noted for is the coffee, as well as El Salvador, right? And Guatemala also noted for its banana plantation. This is also a product of the Neo-Columbian exchange, whereby like these hybrid banana plants were brought in from the Pacific and blended with the more traditional banana to create this huge plantation. In fact, there was a conflict between the Caribbean islands and the Central American countries. Conflict not of the people, but in terms of trade. The British used to consume a lot of Caribbean bananas, but since the European Union became the UK became part of the European Union. They no longer are, but they banned the British from giving preferential treatment to trading with the Caribbean islands, and relied on Central American, which has huge plantations, and were able to actually create greater yield. So oftentimes there were uh, disagreements in international organization between the Caribbean islands and Central American. This is a little tidbit on that. Also, in terms of beef, cattle was brought from Europe to the Americas, um, and the first cows were brought to the Americas by the people involved in the Columbus exploration, and cows were beasts that were, a genetic mixture of beasts from India and Europe. So again, the Columbian exchange. And today we have this issue of conflict beef, whereby like these huge beef farms in places like Guatemala and Honduras kept by virtue of poor labor relations. In fact, labor organizers are assassinated in places like Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, just so that the beef can remain cheap. So oftentimes, if you Google conflict beef, you will realize that this is a big issue in terms of international trade, and this is typified by what happens in Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and such places in Central America. Um, Also, part of this conversation is what we looked at in week 9, which is the demographic, social, economic, and political evolution of that part of the Caribbean after the emancipation of slavery. So, in British Honduras, for example, the officials sought to bring African Americans to the colony as labor for sugar plantation. When this project failed, interest turned towards Chinese labor managed by white planters from the U.S. South. So interest in black or quote-unquote coolie labor, that means people from South India, intensified following the consolidation of land ownership under the British Honduras set of companies. Together, the two companies that predominated that area controlled two-fifths of the colony of Honduras. Okay, so the passage of an Immigration Law Act in 1861 offered principles for the introduction of indigenous labor to British Honduras, specifically from South Asia, African, and Chinese labor. So you have, for example, you have Chinatown now in Panama City, you have Chinatown in San Jose, Costa Rica, and so on. So because of the presence of Asians in these areas in great numbers, not so much in the other countries, but particularly in Panama and Costa Rica. How is development imagined within our subregion, and what is the role of tourism in the economy of our subregion? Well, let's look at the Human Development Index that we researched in the first week of our class, right? The Human Development Index is a summary measure of human development. And we, in the last week of this class, we looked at development and the different forms of development. And we looked at the issue of dependency. And we recognized the fact that tourism was one of the economic pillars that tend to cement dependency in the Caribbean islands. In Central America, the tourism is not as predominant in the economy as it is in the Caribbean islands. But as you can see, if you look at this chart here, you will see a Human Development Index, HDI, for these various countries. And you see the lighter the color, the lower the Human Development Index, right? So Human Development Index look at a variety of different things, life expectancy, education access, issues of equality, and so on, gender equality, access to water, access to telecommunications, and so on. And you can see that the countries of Central America are lower on the scale of these indexes, right? So we looked at the fact that it's a very diverse region, nonetheless, with some similarities. If you look at this map, you will see that countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and Nicaragua, which I spoke of earlier in terms of the dependency on huge plantation that is often managed by U.S. corporations, and sometimes the political situation in those countries are shaped by the policies that the U.S. impose. This is really a different kind of dependency in that part of the world. And so you can see the Caribbean islands. Some countries are of the same level of human development than compared to Central America, but Costa Rica and Panama are the highest in terms of human development within my group of countries, within the Isthmus. But as you can see, the Caribbean islands are much higher on the except for Haiti, much higher on the Human Development Index. Okay, so this is something that we are going to look at a little bit deeper in the course, but we just wanted to just leave you guys with this because we did not go into great depth on in terms of human development. So this is our group, guys. This is the Central American Isthmus Group. We want to thank you for your attention. And my name is Martin Felix. My name is Winthrop Holder. My name is Elise Zhang. And I am Diane Rodriguez. Thank you very much, guys.